From Spokane, this is KSPS-TV.
Hi, I'm Wayne Gretzky. Edmonton, Alberta is a special place for me. Edmonton is where I started my NHL career in 1979, and I've never forgotten it. KSPS, your public television, has produced a wonderful documentary on my old hometown, Edmonton Remembered. The program captures living memories of the great Canadian city. If you remember riding the streetcar across the high-level bridge or watching the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, this is your story. While New York is home for me now, I still have many fond memories of my years in the City of Champions. That's why I'm pleased to invite you to watch Edmonton Remembered. Enjoy.
Edmonton Remembered is a presentation of KSPS Public Television with major funding provided by members of the Friends of Seven. Additional funding provided by the Allard Foundation, a legacy of caring, and by Voice Construction, part of Edmonton's past and future, serving the construction industry for 60 years.
Edmonton is queen of the Northland. Down in the valley and over on the uplands, it stretches out like a dream city. Edmonton is a place of fascinations for Cree and cowboy, trapper and trader, governor and judge, senator and soldier, engineer and explorer, priest, professor, and pioneer, each doing his best to build a great city high on the banks of the Saskatchewan. And it will be a great city. But to my way of thinking, never more interesting than now. It is good to live in these first days, when the foundations of things are being laid.
They had an air compressor for the brakes, and the electric motors chuckled. When you pulled up and stopped to load passengers or unload passengers, you could hear the chuckle of the motors underneath, and that's the only way I can describe the sound that they made.
Traffic was light. In fact, the only traffic control was on 1st Street in Jasper, and they had a policeman there with one of those signs that you turn, and he'd blow his whistle and turn the sign for go, blow his whistle and turn his sign to go the opposite direction. That was the only control that was on in those days.
One thing that you remember is the cigar smoke. All hotel lobbies in those days were, they were just bursting with old cigar smoke. There were spittoons in the lobby. Remember those?
I've heard a lot about this Edmonton City of Champs, and I said, but you know, it wasn't the Oilers that did it. It wasn't the football team that did it. It was the Edmonton grads. That's when it first started.
Some Sunday afternoons, there'd be so much skating because it's just round and round and round to the band. The ice would just be slush by the end of the day.
They had this dream. It's like an impossible dream. They were going to open the North. And I used to watch them and think, what they've seen, what they can do. It wasn't the airplane, it was these men and such ambition. Nothing was impossible. It just took a little longer.
You know, history is often bits of yellowed paper and black and white pictures and places that don't exist anymore. But it's also exciting moments, funny stories, and nostalgic memories. Hello, I'm Tommy Banks, and this is Edmonton, Alberta in the 1920s. Edmonton's my hometown, and if it's yours, or if you've ever lived here, you know that Edmonton has a very special history. In the next hour, you and I are going to step back into the pages of the past and bring some of that history to life. Like this streetcar, for example, it's for us, and it's part of what Edmonton remembered. If the pride of a modern city is its public transportation system, then Edmonton has been a modern city since 1908. 70 years before the LRT whizzed through town, Edmonton had streetcars.
They had wicker seats, they had an air compressor for the brakes, and the electric motors chuckled. When you pulled up and stopped to load passengers or unload passengers, you could hear the chuckle of the motors underneath, and that's the only way I can describe the sound that they made. There was the hiss of the air brakes. They had a very distinctive whistle that you could blow, and there was a bell that the motorman could operate by stepping on a pedal at the front of the car.
The Edmonton Radial Railway was North America's most northern electric streetcar line. Edmonton's first streetcar was actually car number 2. But numbers didn't matter much to the riders because the cars were known by their colors.
The white car came from the Highlands, the red and white came from the Parkdale area, the green and red went to Calder, and the blue and white went down 118th Avenue, went all the way out towards the airport.
West End.
That's all we had, and they were trolleys. They weren't buses. They were trolley lines. And of course we'd get to the corner, the trolley would come off. So they'd have to go out and try and get the trolley back on.
There was a great big coal box right at First and Jasper, so that whenever they went through the center of town, the motorman would get out and load up the coal. So when the coal box went out, late every fall, that was sort of a sign of winter.
When we lived just west of the city here on an Indian reserve called Enoch, we used to drive our horses to the West End, and we'd tie the horses up, and if it was wintertime, we'd cover them up so they wouldn't get cold. And of course they were fed, and they were tied to your wagon or your sleigh, whatever it was. And then we would take a streetcar downtown, which was, quite a bit faster than driving that extra 5 or 6 miles.
Streetcars were just one of the things that made the first decade of the 20th century one of the most exciting times to be alive in Edmonton, when the foundations of things were being laid. Edmonton became a city in 1904. Alberta became a province in 1905. And Edmonton was selected as its capital city. In 1906, the University of Alberta, the first university in the province, was founded in Edmonton by the province's first premier, Alexander Rutherford. The community of South Edmonton became the city of Strathcona in 1907, and the two cities amalgamated in 1912. In their infant years, the combined communities of Greater Edmonton were the heart of the Western Prairie, bustling with 30,000 residents.
The traffic was light. In fact, the only traffic control was on First Street in Jasper, and they had a policeman there with one of those signs that you turn. And he'd blow his whistle and turn the sign for go, blow his whistle and turn his sign to go the opposite direction. That's the First Street in Jasper. That was the only control that was on in those days. Yeah.
East-west traffic was no problem in early Edmonton, but north-south traffic had to cross the river. For many years, the only reliable way across the North Saskatchewan was by Walter's Cable Ferry. John Walter charged a quarter for every vehicle and a dime for every person. Walter was Edmonton's first really wealthy man. The real solution to the problem of crossing the river, though, was not boats, but bridges, 4 of them. The most dramatic of these, across the top of the river canyon, would change the city forever. Construction on the high-level bridge began in 1910 and continued for 3 years. When the bridge opened to traffic in 1913, it offered the highest crossing of a river by a streetcar in the world and was the 4th longest bridge in all of Canada. Edmonton's high-level bridge was built at a cost of more than $2 million and the lives of 4 workmen. Its steel girders would stretch 500 miles if laid end to end and were assembled with 1,400,000 rivets. In the heat of summer, the bridge was as much as 2 feet longer than it was in the cold of winter because of the expansion and contraction of the steel. The high-level bridge was a double-decker, the only bridge of its kind in the world at the time. It had a 2-lane road with sidewalks on the bottom deck and 3 pairs of rails on the top. The inside track carried the trains of the Canadian Pacific Railway. The outside tracks carried the streetcars of the Edmonton Radial Railway. The river was more than 150 feet below.
The favorite excuse that kids would write for being late at Garneau School was the streetcar fell off the high-level bridge.
You know, I tried to sit on the inside so I wouldn't have to look down at the water because it drew you, you know. And all you could see was the water in the river. You couldn't see any of the bridge unless you were on the inside seat. It was scary.
Originally, streetcars crossed the high-level bridge with the door opening off the edge. Departing a stalled car gave one fear of departing this earth. Crossovers were later installed at each end of the bridge to eliminate this risk of life. Still, the river was a long way down.
And if it was a windy day, it would really kind of shake like this. Oh, it used to be scary when you were on the riverside. But actually, the streetcars were a lot of fun.
Streetcars were instrumental in Edmonton's growth as a city. They made it easy for people to work downtown and live in the suburbs like Garneau, the Highlands, or Calder. No matter where people lived, the center of business was still downtown.
Jasper Avenue was alive, absolutely alive. You went downtown, everybody went down. It was the only place to shop, except for the odd department store like Murray and Farrow over in the south side. People came downtown to shop, and people came from rural areas. They'd come in on the train or on the bus, or if they had a car, they'd come in the car to shop.
Jasper Avenue was where it all happened. Even if you had no money, you'd just wander around. And if you had a little money, there were places like Picardy's where you could get a soda or a milkshake. Or the Bay Basement had a soda fountain, and I think for a nickel you could have a cherry Coke. But when your allowance was 10 cents a week, you had to be careful.
You could get a what do you call a hamburger steak? Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes and gravy, or French fries, except for 15 cents. I used to get a quarter. I used to go to a movie for a dime, take 15 cents and go to the White Spot and have a wonderful meal for all of 15 cents.
Then, of course, there was the American Dairy Lunch, which was downstairs, and you could look up through those glass bricks and see people walking by. There were some great hangouts in those days that were of amazingly good quality.
Decades before the dawn of the information age, there was a place in downtown Edmonton that knew what was going on around the world and could tell you in almost any language. Mike's Newsstand on 101st Street and Jasper Avenue. John Mike Michaels had been a newsboy in New York since the age of 10 and came to Edmonton in 1912, aiming to have the best newsstand in Canada.
Mike was on to something quite quickly. He realized that everybody in Edmonton at that time, like Mike himself, had come from somewhere else, and what went on in the hometown was still very big. So Mike opened a stand right on the street at First and Jasper and started bringing in hometown papers.
It had a very grubby wooden floor that went all the length of the newsstand, and there was cigars and tobacco and pipes and things on this side where you paid. On the right-hand side, there was magazines and magazines and magazines and magazines. There was always people in it. A lot of people just used it instead of the library, actually, I think. You know, they'd stand and read and read and read.
Mike's newsstand was popular for more than just newspapers and magazines. Mike's was also the city's ticket booth, scoreboard, and meeting place for generations. John Michaels was more than just the man behind Edmonton's biggest newsstand. He was also one of the city's biggest civic supporters. Perhaps the most notable of Michael's contributions to his adopted hometown was the founding of the Edmonton Journal Newsboys Band in 1913 to help combat juvenile delinquency. The sole prerequisite for joining the band was that the boy had to be a paper carrier. No previous musical training was necessary. The Edmonton Journal Newsboys Band, later called just the Edmonton Newsboys Band, earned acclaim as the largest band in all of Canada and one of the finest bands in all the world before it was brought to an end by the Depression in 1929. One of the characters who was often spotted near Mike's newsstand and elsewhere downtown was a fellow by the name of Pete Jameson, North America's only self-appointed unofficial town crier.
He would advertise anything, baseball games, football games, movies, events, concerts, whatever. He marched. He didn't walk. He strode with his head back and his shoulders back, and he swung his arms, and he bellowed through this megaphone that he carried with him. And everybody knew Pete Jameson. He was just a marvelous fellow.
Saturday was Market Day in downtown Edmonton. Market Square was in the shadow of the Civic Block, which was City Hall at the time. The market was part indoors, part outdoors, and part of most everyone's life.
The place I think I loved most of all, my mother used to take me downtown every Saturday morning because that was when she would do her shopping and she needed an extra hand to carry all the groceries home. And we would go to the Edmonton City Market. And my mother used to meet all her friends there, so for her it was a social occasion.
Starting in 1912, Market Square drew hundreds of people from miles around to buy and sell homemade and homegrown merchandise. City met country here, and just about anything that barked, meowed, squealed, or clucked was for sale.
Very little health inspection then. There was piles of chickens, there was piles, these are all dead of course in there, piles of chickens, ducks, geese, turkeys, piled up on the stalls, no refrigeration. They left the heads on and they wrapped the heads in newspaper and put a elastic band around them, so you had all these chickens with all their heads hanging over the sides of the counters. It was quite unique when I look back at it.
There was time for recreation too in early Edmonton. Many families packed a Sunday lunch and rode the streetcar to East End Park, renamed Borden Park in 1916 after Canada's 8th Prime Minister, Sir Robert Borden. 150 acres of lush grass and trees where people could picnic, play, and enjoy the band concerts. Borden Park had one of Edmonton's first municipal swimming pools, a small zoo, and a variety of the latest carnival amusements, including a merry-go-round, a dark ride called the Old Mill, and an enormous wooden roller coaster. Noticeably absent from helping lay the foundations of things in Edmonton was fully 50% of the population. Women were not considered persons anywhere in the Commonwealth and were therefore not allowed to vote. People who believed this was wrong started the suffrage movement. One of Edmonton's leading suffragettes was author Emily Murphy, the first female police magistrate in the entire British Empire. Murphy and 4 other women, together known as the Famous Five, worked tirelessly all their lives to advance the cause of equality for women.
I'm not going to say ahead of their time, should have happened long before, but women who had the courage and the guts to stand up and say, no, you can't do this. This has to be, women have to have the vote. Women are part of this country and part of the people who built it.
Alberta women won the right to vote in municipal and provincial elections in 1916. Canada declared women were persons in 1929. Judge Murphy retired from the bench in 1931, and she died in 1933. Emily Murphy may not have built the foundations of things, but she did build the foundations of a people. Flowers are left regularly at the statue in Emily Murphy Park to honor her for having done so. Edmonton has grown up a great deal since its first days as a city. At more than 250 square miles, Edmonton is now one of the largest metropolitan areas in Canada. One of the many prides of this modern city remains its public transportation system. Added in 1978, the LRT was the first light rail transit system in North America. The high-level bridge, while still the centerpiece of Edmonton's cross-river traffic system, is now one of 9 bridges across the North Saskatchewan. But Edmonton has not forgotten its past. It's still possible to ride a streetcar across the high-level bridge. This particular car from Osaka, Japan, was going to be scrapped for parts until it found a new home in Edmonton. Today, it runs in a fleet of old streetcars in the hands of the Edmonton Radial Railway Society. The star of the Society's collection is Edmonton Streetcar Number 1, a veteran of 1.5 million miles of public service when it was the last streetcar retired in 1951. This car is the sole survivor of Edmonton's original city streetcars. Ridership of the Edmonton Radial Railway Society's streetcars at Fort Edmonton Park
is now approaching 200,000 people a year, 10 times what Edmonton's population was when streetcars were new here nearly a century ago. Other pieces of Edmonton's past are still here too. This is what's left of one of Edmonton's old cable ferries now resting on the riverbank behind the John Walter Historic Site. Borden Park is still here, though the roller coaster and other amusements are gone. It's interesting to note that pieces of the roller coaster literally ended up in homes all over Edmonton because the Matart Lumber Company bought the entire contraption at salvage in 1935, dismantled it, and used the lumber to build houses, maybe even yours. Saturday is still market day in Edmonton, where we can enjoy not one, but two markets. The traditional farmers market moved to its current home at 97th Street and 102nd Avenue in 1965. The old market square is now Edmonton's main public library. There's also a lively market in Old Strathcona that features arts and crafts and music. Either market is a great way to sample what's grown and made right here. Mike's newsstand lasted until 1980, when it was torn down to make room for the new Scotia Place complex, but there is a place just like Mike's in Edmonton today. Hub Cigar in Old Strathcona stocks 10,000 different titles of magazines, 200 different newspapers, and 100 different brands of cigars, all in a building only 33 feet wide that dates back to 1894.
Come and take a gateway through time, the hopes, the dreams, endless as the sky, a rose-scented journey, a valley of gold, the crystal frozen majesty as winter unfolds.
If Alberta's first premier could see his capital city now, I think he'd be pleased with what we've done to the place. Especially pleased that his old house is still here, designated a provincial historic resource in 1979 to help us remember the days when the foundations of things were being laid in Edmonton. There is much more ahead in our journey through Alberta history. Up next, we'll go flying with Edmonton's famous bush pilots and go dancing at the Mac. But first, let us know you want to see more local programs like this one here on KSPS, your public television, by calling in your pledge of support now.
Good evening, and how exciting to have the world premiere of Edmonton Remembered this evening. I'm Amanda Livingston, Membership Director at KSPS, and with me, Tom MacArthur, the producer of the show. Tom, the first segment is wonderful already.
Edmonton Remembered, like Amanda was saying, this is the world premiere of this very special documentary. It's been about a year in the making. We were up a few times last year to collect all of the videotape and the photographs and the footage that we're enjoying here tonight. It's kind of everybody's home movies of what Edmonton has been in the last middle part of the 20th century, just as we prepare to cross into the next century. It's a marvelous celebration of the big story of Edmonton in the small stories of the city market and riding the streetcar across the high-level bridge and the personal reflections of what Edmonton has been all about.
Well, I love the little stories. That's what makes it truly special. Tom?
Well, and the whole idea of using the small stories to tell the big stories is really how public television comes together. It's small individuals pulling together on one rope to bring a program like this to life. We couldn't do it without all of the existing Friends of Seven, and we're here tonight to ask new members to join us as new members of the Friends of Seven so that programs like this can continue on KSPS, your public television. At the $36 a year pledge level or higher, we're pleased to send you our preview magazine. This comes to you every month of the year and tells you when programs like Edmonton Remembered are going to be on your public television station. You can't buy this in any store. This is an exclusive opportunity to purchase your own copy of this video cassette here tonight at the $132 a year membership level. That's $11 a month for the year in U.S. or Canadian funds, and a VHS copy of Edmonton Remembered will be sent your way along with our thanks. At the $240 membership level, that's $20 a month for the year. 2 copies of Edmonton Remembered, one for yourself. Perhaps you have kids who have moved away from the area and you want to send them a collection of home pictures and home movies of their old hometown. Or perhaps you have kids that go to a school and you want to give this to their library as a way of having the next generation know what Edmonton has been all about in its past. But it's possible here tonight if you pick up the phone and call us now. The number's on your screen. That's 800 number, toll-free from anywhere in the KSPS viewing area. Again, there's only one place in the world you can see this program, only one place in the world you can acquire a copy, here on your public television.
Well, how exciting. We have the world premiere tonight. You have an opportunity to show your support for good television, just like Edmonton Remembered, by becoming a member today. As Tom said, there's only one place to see this and only one place to get your very own copy by becoming a member. And these members of the Friends of Seven contributed over and above their annual membership to enable us to especially entice you to become a new member tonight. We invite you to step up to their challenge and to call now. So you can take a look at the names of these wonderful, wonderful Friends of Seven. Each of these people believes in public television so much, they stepped forward with an additional contribution just to encourage you to join us tonight. So if you haven't made that call yet, please, this is the time. Respond to their challenge and join them, join us, show your appreciation for Edmonton Remembered and the other great programs you enjoy here. Call us right now and make your pledge.
Hello, I'm Claude Kistler, General Manager of KSPS Public Television. We feel very fortunate here to have the strong support of our viewers. In fact, over 3/4 of our funding comes from the Friends of Seven. What's even more special is that half of our supporters live in Canada. That means KSPS is a valued resource in 2 nations, and one of the things that binds us together. If you haven't joined us, consider making that call. You can be a part of a large international family that stands for quality programming on both sides of the border. Let's hear from you now.
When you make your membership pledge, consider charging it on your Visa, MasterCard, or American Express. Charging saves processing costs for your public television, so we can put more dollars into great programs. And it makes you an instant Friend of Seven. Call now and charge it.
This is a celebration here tonight, a celebration of Edmonton, a celebration of public television, and a celebration of the Friends of Seven, the people who brought all of that together into this videotape that we're enjoying here tonight. If you would like a copy, there is only one place in the world where you can acquire one, and it's through your public television, KSPS, by picking up the phone and calling us now this evening. At the $132 membership level, $11 a month for the year in U.S. or Canadian funds, we'll be pleased to send you your very own copy of Edmonton Remembered. Again, this is the first time this documentary has ever been shown in the world, and who produced it? Your public television. The Friends of Seven is the group that has made this possible tonight. They're the ones that have paid all the bills for this to be possible, and we're enjoying their efforts. Please join us as a new member of the Friends of Seven tonight, or as a renewing member, so we can have more programs like this in the future. Amanda?
Well, Tom said that so beautifully. It does take a lot of people working together to make a big project like this happen, and we are so pleased and honored to premiere this marvelous show tonight, and I know you're enjoying it as well. The current Friends of Seven made it possible. If you've not yet joined us, we invite you to call tonight. In addition to the Friends of Seven, however, I'd like to take a minute to thank some of our corporate partners who stepped forward to help support the project. The Edmonton Journal, the Allard Foundation, and Voice Construction. We'd like to offer a very big thank you to them for helping us make this possible. This project possible. Gee, I'm so excited. It's not every day we get to present a world premiere, and it's so wonderful to hear the phones ringing and know you're enjoying it and appreciate it. There's still time before we go back to see more about the Bush Pilots and Dancing at the Mac for you to go to the phone and make your call. Call us now.
You know, we've thanked the Friends of Seven, and Amanda's thanked our corporate supporters here tonight. I'd like to mention a few names of individuals who made this program possible. Fran Humphreys was our Edmonton unit producer, and Pamela Anthony was our Edmonton unit associate producer. To them, I say thank you very much for your help and cooperation to make this dream come true here on public television tonight. And to all of our friends in Edmonton who shared of their photographs, of their home movies, of their recollections, and of their time to make this possible. They supported public television with their efforts. We're asking you to support public television tonight with your call. The number is on your screen. We can't do this kind of programming without your support, so we're giving you the opportunity to do that tonight. Public television is a rare thing. It crosses international boundaries, as we're enjoying together tonight with the program Edmonton Remembered. It's not a function of American television or even Canadian television. It's a function of public television. Television serving the people that watch the signal. So if you're one of those people who are watching that signal tonight, you're the public in public television. Join us here tonight as a Friend of Seven.
Well, I love the way Tom said that. That's right. You are the public in public television. You are the viewer watching, but you can do more. You can take that step to become a member, and we invite you to do so tonight. And at this very exciting world premiere of Edmonton Remembered, consider becoming a member at the $240 membership level. Now that's just $20 monthly in either U.S. or Canadian funds at par. And as your thank you gift, we'd love to send you 2 copies of this brand new world premiere video, Edmonton Remembered. Now, isn't that marvelous? You could have your own copy for your home collection and give a copy to your neighborhood community center, your school, your church, your library. Send it to a relative or a friend. How marvelous. And remember, it's not really like buying a video. It's helping us pay for great programs here on KSPS. So what a marvelous investment. Your membership dollars help us do other marvelous programs. I'm using that word a lot, but I'm enthusiastic tonight. Your membership dollars help us pay for more great programs that we all get to enjoy together. That's the way it works. And as a thank you, we'd love to send you a copy of that video, either 1 copy at the $132 level or 2 copies at the $240 level. Now, Tom, it is so exciting. We've been hearing about this project for a year. It's been in the works for quite some time, and we finally are seeing it tonight. This is marvelous.
The world premiere. If you are a longtime viewer of KSPS, you remember last year at this time we were celebrating the history of Calgary. Tonight we are celebrating the history of Edmonton, another marvelous community in the KSPS viewing area. Yes, a year in the making. Talking to a lot of people, going through a lot of pictures, watching a lot of old movie footage, and bringing it all together in kind of a public television community scrapbook for Edmonton. That's how we brought it all together.
Well, I understand the Edmontonians were very receptive to you and very sharing of information, and you got a lot of great footage and interviews.
Not only are we making new members of the Friends of Seven tonight, but a lot of the people that we interviewed when we first made the contact and said, hey, this is KSPS calling, they said, oh, I'm a member of that station.
Oh, wonderful.
It's a small community, really, when you think about it. A small community of public television, but very special people who make all of this possible, and we're enjoying the fruits of our labors here tonight with Edmonton Remembered.
Here's an added bonus for our friends in Alberta, thanks to the generosity of TELUS. If you're an Albertan and you join or renew your Friends of Seven membership of $36 or more, you'll receive the TELUS payphone card. It's good for $5 in payphone calls throughout Alberta. You won't have to worry about change for the phone. Call now and ask for your payphone card, thanks to TELUS. KSPS Public Television receives no provincial funding at all. So where does the money come from? Viewers like you. When you join the Friends of Seven, you can consider yourself part of the production staff that makes Edmonton Remembered and other great local programs possible. Your support puts the camera people, editors, and researchers to work on quality programs that otherwise just wouldn't happen. By getting involved, you assure that memorable documentaries have a home on KSPS. Call one of these dedicated volunteers right now and become a Friend of Seven. With your pledge, you help create more positive and inspiring programs. Pledge now and join the crew.
We'd like to thank our telephone volunteers from the Spokane Youth Job Program. And if you are trying to get through tonight and you get a busy signal, we appreciate your perseverance in trying again. Looks like all of our telephone volunteers are quite busy behind us tonight. Also, for their significant contribution to the spring membership campaign here at KSPS, our thanks to Sparky's Firehouse Subs at 30th and Regal. We couldn't do it without good people like them. And we can't do it without good people like you. The number is on your screen. If you like historical programming, if you like local programming, if you like Edmonton programming, this is the station that brings it to you. KSPS, your public television. Yes, we're based in Spokane, but we are everybody's station in the KSPS viewing area. So we're Calgary's station, we're Edmonton's station, we're Spokane's public television station, we're Coeur d'Alene's public television station. We are your public television station. We're here tonight celebrating Edmonton in Edmonton Remembered, a documentary that is getting its world premiere here tonight. Only in one place, only on one channel, KSPS, your public television. Again, as we said, many of the telephone volunteers are busy with their telephones tonight, which is a good thing. A bad thing, however, if you're trying to get through to one of them. So we ask for your perseverance and for your patience, and try back again if you get a busy signal.
Tom, we have had a lot of calls tonight, and let's say a few thank yous. This is my favorite part of the program because as membership director here at the Friends of Seven, I just love it when the phones ring and love to see members taking part and participating in the process. So I'd like to thank Al Watch for calling from Calgary this evening, a renewing member of the Friends of Seven who's enjoying the show and wants to show his support. Al, thank you very much for your call tonight.
Calling from Calgary to support Edmonton Remembered. Thank you very much, Al. Hilda Ruman is calling from Edmonton tonight. She joins us as a returning member of the Friends of Seven. Hilda, thank you very much. Welcome back to the family, and that video will be shipped your way very soon.
Brian Hornby of Sherwood Park has called tonight, a friend of Seven. It's always great to hear from old friends as well. Brian, thanks a lot for calling. We're glad you're enjoying it.
And again, the pledges are in U.S. or Canadian funds, so whatever dollar sign you see on your screen as we mentioning the various membership levels, that's in U.S. or Canadian funds, so you don't have to worry about any kind of conversion or anything like that. Patricia Coteau is calling from Calgary tonight as well. Patricia, we thank you very much for your support of the Friends of Seven, and that videotape of Edmonton Remembered will be shipped your way along with the preview magazine and our thanks.
And we've heard from Eric Bjorklund tonight from Edmonton. Wonderful, Eric. Thanks for calling. Great to hear from you. We appreciate your support. Glad you're watching. Isn't it fun to hear these phones ring?
It's a vote of confidence, certainly, in what this station is doing. You know, you invest in something for a year with so many people. You make so many contacts and get so many pieces of paper, and you pull it all together into one videotape. And when you give birth to it on live television, as we're doing tonight, and you see the community support that it's getting, it's nice to see your child walk out into the world and do well.
Well, I know the phones are ringing. If you get a busy signal, try again, please. We'd love to talk to you. Our phone volunteers are doing a super job, and they'd love to take your call. We're going back to see more about the Bush Pilots and Dancing at the Mac. Now, yes. I love the sound of both of those stories.
Let's go do it.
Well, we aren't quite there yet, but now, Dancing at the Mac, doesn't that just have a romantic ring to it anyway?
Well, if you're not from Edmonton, you might wonder, well, what's the Mac? The Hotel McDonald, a marvelous place, a castle, really, on the side of the banks of the North Saskatchewan River. And that's what we'll be telling you about as Edmonton Remembered continues.
It only takes a moment to become a Friend of Seven, and even less time if you charge your pledge on your Visa, MasterCard, or American Express. Charging is the quickest way to join, and you enjoy the benefits of membership right away. Or you can request an invoice and pay by check. We can set up a payment plan that's right for you, and you'll become an active member of the Friends of Seven in less than 2 minutes. Call the number on your screen and make a pledge right now. Then sit back and enjoy the programs you make possible on KSPS.
I get so much joy from it, and I felt that I was sitting here in my living room enjoying what you were putting a lot of effort and money into, and the least I could do was to support. I can't support in a great way. I'd like to help much more financially, but if everybody did a little bit, I'm sure that your work would be a lot easier and you'd be able to provide even better programming for us.
Coming up in the next segment of Edmonton Remembered, we talk about the Bush Pilots, the famous Bush Pilots of really not those many years ago. And one of the pilots that we talk about is Wap May, and I had the pleasure to talk with Denny May, his son, over the phone when we were in Edmonton researching the program. And you hear these personal stories come to life through people who knew some of the people who made Edmonton history and Canadian history, truly, for that matter. And it's the small stories that help us tell the big story, and that's what we're celebrating in the program of Edmonton Remembered. And as I was telling Amanda as we were preparing for the evening, I said, well, now, you know, last night when we finished editing all of this, we really didn't know which version of the show was going to be on the air. Well, here's a little bit of background behind the story. We were waiting for some tape to come from Toronto of the Commonwealth Games, and we weren't sure when exactly we were going to get the tape. And it was something that we weren't quite sure was going to be here in time for the premiere tonight. So we actually had two separate versions of the show, one talking about the Commonwealth Games, the other one not. And the tape arrived this morning. It was edited in by noon, and that's the version of the show we're watching tonight.
My goodness, hot off the presses,
this is
so
hot
to speak.
off the press, yes, definitely.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, Tom, we've heard from some other friends. I want to pass a few of these along to you.
I would love to.
It's so fun to say thank you for calling. Remember, you can become a member tonight at the $132 membership level for the year. That's just $11 monthly in U.S. or Canadian funds at par. And as your thank you gift, we'd love to send you a copy of the Edmonton Remembered video that we're enjoying tonight. And I'd like to thank Stephen Yates from calling in from Calgary this evening and making a wonderful pledge, becoming a brand new member of the Friends of Seven. And Stephen, I hope you love having your very own copy of the video.
Reg Iving is calling from Edmonton as a new member of the Friends of Seven tonight. Reg, thank you very much for having confidence in programs like this on your public television station, and we'll be pleased to send the video to you shortly.
And Pam Wojcicki has called from Edmonton as well to become a brand new member of the Friends of Seven. Pam, marvelous. We're delighted to get your call tonight and know you're enjoying it and want to help.
Another new member calls from Edmonton, May Albrecht. May, thank you very much. We appreciate your vote of confidence in what we're doing here tonight in celebrating Edmonton's past and celebrating Edmonton's history, truly in celebrating what public television does best, and that's telling the stories of the communities that it serves. That's what public television does best.
Well, it's great to see our volunteers from Spokane Youth Job Corps being so busy on those telephones. If you've not yet gotten through, try again. They'd love to take your call and talk with you. It's so exciting to hear from viewers who want to become members and support this kind of television. That's what these membership campaigns are all about. It's interactive television, basically. We don't just present the programs, we ask you to give feedback, and your call and your pledge of support and your membership dollars are marvelous votes for good television.
Coming up in this next segment, let me ask you if these words mean anything to you. The barn, the Trocadero, the Mac, sound familiar? Well, those are things of Edmonton's past that we'll be celebrating in the next segment of Edmonton Remembered. The barn was a ballroom in Edmonton, as was the Trocadero.
Ballroom, apparently.
A very big ballroom, very popular ballroom. And one of the stories you won't find mentioned in the history books is a mention of something called the slot.
The slot?
If you frequented the barn or the Trocadero, you knew what the slot was. We'll tell you about that as we continue with Edmonton Remembered.
I'm looking forward to it. Going in to hear more about bush pilots, dancing at the Mac, the slot, the Trocadero, the barn. My goodness, I can't wait. This is going to be a marvelous evening. Stay with us. We're going back for more of the world premiere of Edmonton Remembered, and I'm so delighted to have producer Tom MacArthur with us for this premiere. Stay tuned.
Back to the show.
Well, if Edmonton were a kingdom, this would be its palace, the Hotel Macdonald. Edmontonians fondly call it the Mac. We're on the south side of the hotel, on the patio and gardens overlooking the North Saskatchewan River Valley. Believe it or not, at one point in the hotel's history, this was a parking lot. But it's been restored now by Canadian Pacific, the patio, the gardens, and the hotel itself, to the way it was when the Mac first opened in 1915. For more than 80 years, generations of Edmontonians have come here to celebrate special occasions, and for an evening at least, to live like royalty.
The Hotel Macdonald was built by the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway and named for Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald. Construction on the hotel, described as fireproof, began in 1912, the year of the unsinkable Titanic's maiden voyage. Nearly 3 years and $2 million later, the Mac was opened to the public on July 5th, 1915.
Edmonton in those days was a very genteel place, but it was very shabby. There'd been nothing built downtown for years and years, and all the buildings had just gotten a bit older. And but when you went to the McDonald on a Saturday night, it was like boarding a cruise ship. It seemed very, very big then. Nowadays, you realize it's really quite a small, intimate hotel, but it dominated the skyline, and it was a center. It was a place to be.
The Mac, as everyone called it, was the last word in hotel accommodations. Each of her 204 rooms had a telephone, running water, and a window to the outside. A basic room cost $2 a night. Men and women each had their own entrance. Unescorted ladies were not allowed in the lobby. The Mac's Saturday night supper dances were legendary, where anyone could be king or queen for 50 cents. The Hotel McDonald quickly gained fame for its dignity, its hospitality, and its baked Alaska. The hotel also offered free soap, as one little girl discovered in 1933.
Mother said, "What have you got in your pockets?" I said, "Soap." She said, "Where did you get it?" I said, "At the castle." "Somebody give it to you?" "Oh, no, Mother. You help yourself. There was lots." She got her coat and hat on and her overshoes, and away we went on the streetcar back to the Hotel McDonald. So I took all these little bars of soap and put them on the front desk. And then he gave me a little talking to, but I only remember his last sentence. He said, "Don't ever let me see you in this hotel again."
Jacobs did return to the Mac as an employee in 1955. Canadian National Railways owned the hotel then and had just completed the hotel's infamous 300-room annex, the tallest structure in the province at the time. A journal editorial called it a far from beautiful 16-story rectangular mass. Most people called it the box.
They built an annex to the McDonald Hotel that, on an architectural scale of 10, probably rated about 2 from an appearance point of view. And people visiting Edmonton, you would often point and say, "That's the McDonald Hotel, and that's the box it came in."
The box lasted more than 30 years until Canadian National brought it down during a huge renovation project in the mid-1980s. During the renovation, Canadian National lost interest in the hotel business and in restoring the Mac.
Everyone, no matter who you spoke with, said, "When are they going to open that hotel? That's our pride and joy of Edmonton, is the Hotel McDonald." And I think everyone felt the same way as I did, that this building should not be standing empty. It should be reopened. Get at it.
The Hotel McDonald was sold to Canadian Pacific Hotels and Resorts in 1988 for $260 million. Renovations resumed, and the hotel was brought back to life. The Mac was back. The Hotel McDonald reopened to the public on the 15th of May, 1991. My band and I were honored to play that night here in the Empire Ballroom. The days when the Mac was the tallest building on Edmonton's skyline have long since passed. A big city has grown up around her. Still, she remains what she was when she was brand new, a palace on the plains, a place where we ordinary people can have an extraordinary time. The Mac was famous for its dances, but so too were Edmonton's ballrooms like the Barn and the Trocadero. The Barn was, well, a barn. Originally built to hold raw fur for the Hudson's Bay Company, the Barn opened in 1940 and became Edmonton's most popular dance hall and rendezvous spot during the war. The Trocadero opened on New Year's Eve 1946 in the old Empire Theatre building. The Troc was the cream of Edmonton's ballrooms. Both were famous for the slot.
Oh, yes, yes, the slot. Yes, it was illegal to drink in public. You were, in fact, if you bought a bottle of liquor in a government store, you were supposed to go home by the shortest route before you opened it. Well, this wasn't very practical, so starting with the barn, there were slots under the tables, which would take usually a 13-ounce bottle. So if you had 2 or 3 couples, each with a 13-ounce bottle, and with 4 slots under the table, that you managed to circumvent the liquor laws very neatly. That was part of the ritual.
The Trocadero Ballroom. I was a little older when we went there, but there was no there was no liquor sold. So when you went to the dances, you took a little Mickey and you put it under the table. But that was really the place to go to dance.
The barn was torn down in 1954. The Troc was torn down in 1981. People just don't dance like they used to. In many cities across Canada, people go somewhere else to find something to do. In Edmonton, we stay right here. I can't think of another city in the country that has more festivals, more concerts, more things to do than Edmonton. Throughout the years, a lot of Edmonton's cultural life has taken place right here in the heart of the city. From the time of dirt streets and wooden sidewalks, this is where people came to experience the world. Edmonton has been a theater town from the beginning. There's been some form of organized dramatic entertainment here since 1886, including opera, vaudeville, and plays. Edmonton's first motion picture house, The Bijou, opened in 1907. Admission was 10 cents. Owners of so-called legitimate theaters pushed for a city ordinance outlawing electric motors, so the movie houses had to turn their projectors by hand. Theaters, whether legitimate or otherwise, were entertainment palaces with an almost regal ambience, reflected in names like the Dreamland, the Princess, the Monarch, and the Empress. Edmonton's first resident professional theater company opened in 1965 in the remodeled Salvation Army Citadel. Edmonton attorney Joe Schachter had been to Broadway, and he thought, why can't we do that here? And the Citadel Theater was born.
I think most of the immigration from Europe coming out west, came to Edmonton, and so we got a lot of people of British extraction and Italian and French, German, what have you. And those people grew up with culture in their lives. Theater, music, dance. So they brought that love with them. And so it happened, it helped the arts flourish in Alberta.
Professional theater became so popular in Edmonton that the Citadel outgrew its first home within a decade. A new Citadel was built just east of the Centennial Library, and it's even more popular than the old theater. The new Citadel Theater welcomed its first audiences in the fall of 1976, and the theater has gone on to become the leading regional theater in the country, with some of the best performers and some of the best shows in the world.
I honestly believe that you can have all the high-rise buildings you want, you can have all the freeways, yeah, but you can have all the apartment buildings and head offices, but a city needs to have a heart, needs to have a soul, and I truly believe that the soul and the heart of a city is exemplified by its culture. And one of the main elements of the culture, of course, is the theater.
The Citadel is now one of more than a dozen live theater venues in Edmonton. In Old Strathcona, the city's oldest surviving firehouse has been converted to the Walterdale Playhouse, founded by Frank and Mary Glenfield.
People have created their own special place in the arts, as they have with hockey and with football here too, but there's been this very strong arts community, and I think it's to do with the weather.
But I think also there's a correlation between sports and theatre here, and people often say, "Oh my God, what do you mean? You know, and I say, well, yes, there is the same sort of, you know, we happy few, we band of brothers between the theatre people as between the people to do with the Oilers and the Eskimos. I think that there is that same feeling of, it's ours, you know?
A piece of local culture for which Edmonton has earned world fame is its Ukrainian dance troupes, two of them. The Shumka Dancers, founded in 1959, and the Cheremosh Dance Ensemble, founded in 1969, both by Chester Couch. Their colorful dances are a treasure, not just for Ukrainian Canadians, but for all Canadians.
Our culture, Ukrainian culture, is really part of the Canadian culture in general. It adds and contributes to the color and diversity, and this is what is very important. Otherwise, it would be very boring if we all threw everything, you know, put everything aside and we didn't have all this variety. I think it'd be pretty dull.
Luba Couch believes that her husband's mother and father and hers would have been proud to see dances from the old country alive and well in Canada today.
He always believed that when you have to give, because God helped you to get that, and you have to give something of yourself. It's not enough to just live for yourself. And I think he would have been proud of both of us, that we tried to do our best and give him what we can. I mean, you can only do so much, but at least we've done a little bit.
Edmonton has a habit of doing great things and then not making a big deal out of having done them. Such is the case with the city's contribution to aviation. For example, did you know that the first municipal airport in Canada was here in Edmonton? Blatchford Field opened in 1926 and cost the city $400. But Edmonton's aviation story began back in the teens after the First World War, when returning military pilots used their flying skills to build communities rather than to destroy them. These bush pilots made Edmonton the gateway to the north.
It was a good country to fly in, very good country. Our weather here is the best in Canada. But in the winter, it was pretty tough, a lot of our traveling. Then we had to start long before daylight to get up and get things warmed up and get out and working in the dark, getting your engine warmed.
Ground crew for the bush pilots had equally challenging workdays. Whether the aircraft was a Belanca, a Fairchild, or a Norseman, aircraft would often need repairs in the middle of the bush country with little more than hand tools.
One time I was welding on a Norseman at Yellowknife, so you're laying on your back trying to run a bead with an arc welder on this lug, and a big wave hits the thing, and a big glob of metal fell into the top of my boot right down on my ankle. Burned a hole there about a half-inch deep. Had to lay there till it finished sizzling. But other than that, things were fairly routine.
Perhaps the most famous of Edmonton's legendary bush pilots was Wilfred Wap May, described as one of the finest natural flyers in the history of aviation anywhere in the world. Wap could have boasted any number of times about his many accomplishments, but he never did. Not even after he made the first Mercy flight in Canadian history. It happened on a winter morning in 1929. Word had come down from Fort Vermilion that the people there were fighting a diphtheria outbreak. They desperately needed some antitoxin, but the only way in was by air. Wap May and Vic Horner would fly it from Edmonton. The minus 33 Fahrenheit temperature meant May and Horner had to keep the precious cargo in their clothes to keep it from freezing in the open cockpit Avro Avian. The pair took off on January 2nd. Fort Vermilion was 840 miles away. It would take them 3 days to get there. A week later, with mission accomplished, May and Horner returned to Edmonton and a welcoming crowd of 10,000 people. On the trip home, May's scarf had frozen to his face. After landing, when he peeled the scarf off, the skin of his lips came away with it. As photographers snapped away, the normally smiling May kept a straight face, for to do otherwise was just too painful.
These were special men. Special gift. They only pass our way. Maybe once in a lifetime you run into somebody like them. They're the last frontier. They had this dream. It's like an impossible dream, they were going to open the north. And I used to watch them and think, what they've seen, what they can do. It wasn't the airplane, it was these men, and such ambition. Nothing was impossible. That just took a little longer.
Among May's many awards was the Order of the British Empire, the American Medal of Freedom, and the McKee Trophy for the most meritorious service for the advancement of Canadian aviation. May never made a big deal out of any of it, nor the fact that he had only one good eye. Who would have believed him anyway? In 1942, at the height of the Second World War, Blatchford Field handled 860 aircraft in one day. It was the busiest airport on the continent. With so much...
We cried, but you never cried where crews could see you.
Marie Wright was one of the few women who flew in the war as a ferry pilot. Often she'd be among the first to see airplanes returning to their bases in England, often little more than scrap with engines.
No matter what you see, you don't cry, Marie. I said, but look at her. She's all blown down. No, don't you cry. He said, they know they mightn't be alive tomorrow morning. You don't have to look like it. I remember they opened the door, the pilot sitting there with his hands on the controls, and a couple of the medics said, okay, sir, you can let go now. He said, not before my crew's out. And there he sat. And they got it in the nav, he got it in the shoulder, I think it was. And most of them got ricochet or had got a bullet one place or the other. And then they came to the tail gunner. Bright red carrot hair. Still had freckles. I can see him today. Brought him out on sort of a stretcher effort. As he went past me, he looked and he said, we brought her back. And before I stopped to realize what I was saying, I said, but what a hell of a mess. And he laughed and he said, see ya. He lost both his legs.
The greatest celebration in Edmonton's history was on August 14th, 1945, VJ Day. The war was now over around the world and the boys would be coming home. In the few years after the war, encouraged by government baby bonuses, Canada's birth rate was the highest of any developed country in the Western world, but Edmonton was still relatively undeveloped as a city. 80% of its streets were still unpaved, and 3/4 of its sidewalks were still wood. Edmonton desperately needed a post-war boost. The boost came when a gusher turned up near Leduc in 1947. Edmonton now had both reasons and resources to enjoy the second half of the 20th century in peace and prosperity. A few aircraft in the Alberta Aviation Museum help us remember how intrepid flyers once dreamed of opening up the Northland and changed Edmonton's course through history. A few pipes in the ground near the Petroleum Hall of Fame help us remember where Leduc Oil Well No. 1 sprang to life and changed Alberta's course through history. A few words on a stone in the heart of the city help us remember Edmonton's honored dead who changed the world's course through history. Now it is we who must build on their foundations. Still to come on Edmonton Remembered, meet Sparky, the mascot of the Edmonton Grads, and hoist the Stanley Cup with the Edmonton Oilers. We're going to pause the tape here for just a few minutes to thank the Friends of Seven for making this program possible and to invite new friends to join us in keeping history alive on public television. One reason is a women's amateur basketball team that started here in 1914.
Well, I've heard a lot about this Edmonton City of Champs, and I said, but you know, it wasn't the Oilers that did it. It wasn't the football team did it, and it was the Edmonton Grads. That's when it first started. We were the start of that slogan, and I don't want them to forget about it.
The Edmonton Grads were graduates of the city's McDougall Commercial High School. Unbelievably, in their quarter century on the boards, the Grads played 522 games and lost only 20, a 96% win record.
Well, I just listened to them on the radio, and I just lived and died for them because they were such a phenomenon.
Yeah, it really was. Oh. Probably didn't realize it at that time how much of a phenomenon they were.
No, we hadn't a clue, but they were just so good.
Coach Percy Page believed in teamwork, developed an excellent short passing game, and above all, taught his players that they were ladies first. It was all strictly amateur. Neither the coach nor the players were ever paid.
We never got a cent of money. We were all working, all of us, and the only money that I've ever remembered was down in San Francisco when Mr. Page gave us a U.S. dollar to go out and buy a souvenir in San Francisco. That's all the money we ever got.
The Edmonton Grads played their last game on their home court at the Gardens on June 5th, 1940. The man who invented basketball, a Canadian by the name of James Naismith, said the Edmonton Grads was the finest basketball team that ever stepped on a floor. They were athletes, they were sportsmen, they were ladies, and they were champions.
I remember watching the Grads play and watching them practice and warm up and dribble the balls around and about. I knew the names of many of the Edmonton Grads. It was just a part of Edmonton. And again, we didn't appreciate what we had. These ladies were world champions, and they were based here in Edmonton.
Don't forget, it started in Edmonton before anybody with the Edmonton Grads. I've got to get that right.
Coach Percy Page went on to a career in politics and became Alberta's lieutenant governor in 1959. He died in 1973. The Grads' mascot, a stuffed dog named Sparky, survives as a reminder of the team that sparked a reputation for winning a nickname for Edmonton as the City of Champions.
Goodbye, old Alouettes, farewell to you. Take one last look before our team goes through. Get some new halfbacks, get a new line. You'll win that old Grey Cup some other time.
The Edmonton Eskimos were champions on the football field in the 1954 Grey Cup. The Montreal Alouettes were heavily favored to win, and they almost did, except for the most famous play in Grey Cup history. Losing, with only a few minutes left to play, Edmonton's players were on the defensive near their own goal line. Suddenly, Montreal fumbled the ball. Jackie Parker picked it up and ran 92 yards for a touchdown that tied the game.
It is Jackie Parker, not Johnny Bright. That's our boy Parker.
We were trailing in the game, I think it was 25-20. It was late in the game, and Montreal was marching again. We kept up, but they were a really good team. And they're marching, and I guess there was 2 minutes to go, and there was a fumble, and I happened to be there and pick it up and run it all the way back. And it's kind of been I think the biggest thing, I think, was because we weren't supposed to have much of a chance. And all at once, we were ahead, and we hung on and won the game.
The Edmonton Eskimos won the 1954 Grey Cup by a score of 26-25. They won the Cup again in 55, 56, 75, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 87, and 1993, 11 times to date, proving that Edmonton can produce champions on the football field too. And then there's hockey. Edmonton has had champions on the ice for half of the 20th century. The Edmonton Flyers won the Allen Cup in 1948. In 1950, the Edmonton Mercuries captured the world title, and in 1952, an Olympic gold medal. Jack Manson was on both those teams.
I believe in Western Canada, most of the cities, at least in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, have strong hockey roots. And the reason for that, I guess, is that back when most of the fellows were younger, there was good access to rinks. Like you could always get to an open-air rink somewhere to practice and to play, and we developed a lot of hockey players.
And then, of course, there's the 5-time Stanley Cup champions, the Edmonton Oilers. When the Oilers joined the National Hockey League in 1979, there were many who used the word can't to shoot down Edmonton's small-town dreams of being world champions.
The Oilers have won the Stanley Cup.
But the word changed to can when the Oilers won their first Stanley Cup in 1984, their 5th year in the league, and went on to win it 4 more times after that.
Maybe that's what gets people going, that word can't. You know, you can't do it because this or because of that. And I look at it the opposite way. I think it's a great challenge to do it when people tell you you can't do something. And I think the people in Edmonton are the same way.
The little team that could won the Stanley Cup in 1984, 85, 87, 88, and 90. 5 times in 7 years. Those who were part of that magical decade for hockey in Edmonton remember the feeling of being crowned world champions.
Your entire life flashes before your eyes when you finally do win a championship, or in our case, win the Stanley Cup. You know, grew up dreaming that, hoisting the cup over our heads. We, in fact, in the playoff runs the previous years, we would plaster pictures of previous Stanley Cup winners like Jean Beliveau with the cup over his head, and Bobby Clark and Bobby Orr, and we all tried to sort of envision ourselves doing it in a fun sort of way. So when it actually did happen, it was a phenomenal moment.
Kevin Lowe still skates for the Oilers, not as a player any longer, but as a coach. This is a part of the game that fans rarely see, the hours of practice that go into making champions. There is no magic potion. It takes hard work to get to the top. But Edmonton knows the way, and will be there again. Edmonton remembers Lowe's former teammate, the gangly teenager who stepped on the ice in an Oilers uniform back in 1979 and changed the game. Wayne Gretzky will forever be called the Great One for what he did for the sport of hockey, and Edmonton will forever be proud because he did it here.
Wayne is one guy that's never really said the wrong thing, been in the wrong place at the wrong time, never gets a speeding ticket. You know, he's really different than most people. And that's why he's such a great player. He lives on a different planet than most of us do. And he played on that planet. He saw the game different. He understands it differently. He's been a terrific ambassador for the NHL.
Many of Edmonton's champions were brought home on radio. Radio was an exciting thing when it came to Alberta in 1922. CJCA was the first on the air in the province with studios in the Edmonton Journal newsroom. Behind the microphone was 22-year-old Dick Rice, already a veteran broadcaster who started with the Marconi Company in England when he was 15. Rice bought his own radio station in 1934, changed the call letters to CFRN, added an FM station in 1951, and television in 1954.
CFRN TV presents News in Review.
Well, hi once again, baby.
Many adults in Edmonton today remember growing up with CFRN's kids shows, including Popcorn Playhouse. Station weatherman Eric Neville was Klondike Eric, and Muskeg Moose his trusty sidekick.
I guess there's enough time passed. We can probably tell people that Eric Neville himself used to pull a little string underneath Muskeg's prize bag, the little mail bag that held the prizes. And he would basically be the ventriloquist answering Muskeg, or for Muskeg, on the riddle segment.
In 1974, Edmonton surgeon and entrepreneur Charles Allard asked me to join a group of partners in creating Alberta's first independent television station. We signed on the air in the fall of 1974 with the call letters CITV.
From Television Center in Edmonton, it's the Tommy Banks Show. Thank you very much.
When the station first opened, one of the things they did was a daily Tommy Banks show of talk variety. We brought many artists up from the United States, and it was a pretty exciting time. Tom has magnetism that goes through the camera, and so we did a variety show in Edmonton, which was another one that if someone had said, you can't do a variety show that will rival something coming out of Hollywood in Edmonton, we did it, and it was successful, and we did a lot of episodes of the show, and Tom was very pleased with it.
CITV is probably remembered best for its in-concert series at the Jubilee Auditorium. Using state-of-the-art equipment and innovative production techniques, the series was not just Edmonton television at its best, but world-class television produced in Edmonton. ITV led the way to Canada becoming the second largest producer of television programs in the world.
Part of the promise of performance to originally get the license was to do concerts with the symphony, to do several a year. And it branched into, let's take a major star and put them with the symphony, and that will bring us audience to the symphony and bring us sales of the show. So as the programs progressed over the years, we got to about 40 shows that were seen in 80 countries.
Charles Allard died in 1991. Dick Rice in 1992. The broadcasting stations they started are still on the air in Edmonton, still helping to bring our champions home. Perhaps it's natural for this city of champions to do things on a grand scale. Take shopping malls, for instance. The West Edmonton Mall is the world's largest shopping and entertainment complex with the world's largest indoor amusement park and the world's largest indoor wave pool. Built in 4 phases, the first of which opened in 1981, the mall covers the area of more than 100 football fields and has 800 stores. Nearly half of all the money tourists spend in Edmonton is spent here. For all its international flavor, there is still something very Canadian here. A hockey rink. Every week, there are skaters here who remember learning how to skate at the Central Rink. For some, the attraction there was the live band. For others, it was
girls. I mean, you went there and Saturday, Sunday, they used to have a band in the middle of the thing and a little bandstand, freezing whatever it was they froze off because it could get pretty cold. But we had a lot of fun skating there and picking up girls, and it was like the ballrooms. It was a social gathering place for Edmonton.
Some Sunday afternoons, there'd be so much skating because it's just round and round and round to the bands, of course, and the ice would just be slush by the end of the day. I kid you not. I was there one day, and by the end of the afternoon, it was just slush.
One of the outstanding success stories in the history of Edmonton was the 1978 Commonwealth Games. I composed the official theme song, We're Gonna Show the World, which we did, proudly. In order to get the games, Edmonton had to lobby hard 6 years before in Germany. Ivor Dent was mayor at the time and says Edmonton won the bid because of a surprise appearance by an Edmonton band that just happened to be in town.
Doors were thrown open, and this raucous group of young ladies come prancing into the room and just doing a fabulous job. And people backed away because they were going to get run over if they didn't. And they marched around and around the room 3 or 4 times and then back out the doors. This so enthralled the audience that they just were, there was pandemonium. They really loved that little little episode. And one of the guys from Africa, their leader actually, ran over to me and says, Ivor, you've won this bid. And he picked me up, and he was a strong man, and swung me around, and my feet are way out there. And indeed, I knew we were going to win.
The opening ceremonies of the games were watched by 42,000 spectators in Commonwealth Stadium and by millions more around the world on television. The Commonwealth Games were everything that is good about Edmonton. Beautiful weather, terrific volunteers, and true sportsmanship. I couldn't have been more proud of my hometown.
Come and take a gateway through time, the hopes, the dreams, endless as the sky, a rose-scented journey, a
Well, we've come to the end of the line on our journey through part of Edmonton's past. I hope that you've enjoyed that journey as much as I have. And remember that the good old days aren't all gone. Some of them are right here, right now. Keep them, preserve them, and protect them, because sometime in the new century you will open that scrapbook and you'll be very glad that you saved some history of your own. I'm Tommy Banks. Thanks very much for being with us and being part of what Edmonton remembered. Bye for now.